Good afternoon. Thank you for coming. My name is Jens Hoffmann. I'm the curator for Art Parcours, a special program organized by Art Basel this year with 10 site-specific installations throughout the old city of Basel. One of the projects we organized for Art Parcours was Martha Rosler's garage sale, titled for this version, Fair Trade Garage Sale. And we are here to talk with Martha Rosler, who is sitting here, about the garage sale, the history of the garage sale, and specifically about the garage sale here in Basel. So maybe, Martha, can you just, because you selected the slides, tell me about this particular image?
That's Jens Hoffmann, my curator, on a ladder just before we're finishing the installation.
Okay.
The installation is at the Museum of Culture, is that right?
Museum of Cultural History, which is up in the old city of Basel, and it's open tonight from 8 to 11 and tomorrow night from 8 to 11. So maybe you should just speak a little bit about the garage sale, explain the ideas, and then maybe we go a little bit into the history of the project.
I'd rather not explain the ideas because the ideas
or the concept, like what is actually happening.
It's a garage sale where people buy things.
Well, maybe European audiences don't know what the garage sale is. Like a flea market.
Yeah.
And
books and clothing and toys and bicycles and whatever else. And there's also a traveling array of items from previous garage sales, mostly clothing, that rolls a history along with the work because the work is now venerable and older than many people's parents.
When did you do the garage sale for the first time?
1973, and the television image in this is still the this is showing a videotape that I made at the 1977 garage sale. The text is actually very important to understanding the work, but I knew very well from the first minute that I did this work that no one who comes into a space full of bargains or purported bargains gives a damn about any kind of meta markers like a videotape with a text, or strange things like dead plants in the entry, or other signs that there might be something afoot other than a simple, straightforward sale. But that's not a problem for me. However, this is playing in every garage sale, or almost everyone, not quite everyone. So I'm trying to get this to move, and it's fighting me. Go forward. There's the dead plant. Am I going forward or backward? I'm going backward. Okay.
Why don't you speak a little bit about the first time that you made the garage in 1973?
I'm getting there. I'm getting there.
So these are all images from
last night.
From last night when we started the garage sale. Do you take images of everyone who buys something?
No, but I try. I would, but it gets impossible, boring, and whatever, and intrusive. So this is the origin. I started this when it was actually not acceptable, fun, or amusing to anybody to have a garage sale in an art gallery. In fact, it was considered to be crude, low, and vulgar, which, of course, is one reason why I did it. I explained to people that I'm from a large island off the coast of the United States, and particularly in the days when I was growing up, the culture of that island and its associated other islands, which make up the city of New York, had only a distant relationship to the culture of the United States. I moved in 1969 to San Diego, California, which was moving into that storied culture of the Beach Boys and garage sales, but I'd never heard of garage sales. And it was actually first a big shock to me that people would actually try to sell things they didn't want to their neighbors who could see, you were wearing that yesterday and now you think I should buy it. But actually I realized after a while that it was a genuine social form that was a way of relating to one's neighbors through exchange. And also because I did the first one in '73 when there was an oil shock and therefore a tremendous recession. People really needed to get more money so they could buy more things. So I decided to hold a garage sale that was advertised in the Penny Saver, which is the local advertiser newspaper, rather than advertising it in any art venue, but I held it in the art gallery at the University of California, San Diego. So I was mixing publics there. And they ignored each other. It wasn't a problem. Everyone is happy to shop with everybody else. That's me. And there's the dead tree, actually. So I was happy to sell things to people, but also the installation was kind of laid out as a pseudo-biographical presentation, and people appeared to be horrified that I would be selling private letters and baby shoes, but I have to tell you that all such fears are now gone from the art world in particular. When this has gradually moved into the art world as a regularized event, because the art world is no longer fearful about the sign of commodity over the works. So therefore, it's not a problem to sell low items or high items in an art venue, like an art fair. Okay. I'm rambling. This is 1977 when it went up to the art gallery, to the garage of La Mamelle Art Gallery, which was an alternative space in San Francisco.
You were just saying that we're so used now to think about art as commodities. And when I invited you to do this project here, my idea was really to see how we can turn commodities into a work of art by having the garage sale as part of the art fair.
And?
But just like describing the motifs
okay.
of how the garage sale could function within the framework of an art fair, obviously.
Well,
which, you know, it has very similar structure. You walk into the room, you look at the items, you come to the seller, you negotiate the price, and you know, either have an agreement or not, only that your items are perhaps less expensive than what you would buy at the fair.
Maybe. But in terms of relative value, they may be about equivalent.
I'm not sure.
The distance between what people pay and what the item is could be equivalent.
Could be, yeah.
It could be.
So these are all the garage sales that have happened.
Yeah.
But can you maybe talk a little bit about your experiences of the different restagings of the garage sale in different times, from like 1973 to 2010? It seems like a project that makes a lot of sense to do again right now at this particular moment after the economic crisis, but I don't know how it worked in between at other moments.
The projects are always situated differently in relationship to the economies that they're a part of. I think the one in Dublin in 2005 was a kind of I think it was 2005, a kind of a pulling oneself together in an economy that had been poor for hundreds of years and suddenly was quite wealthy, and they were looking at their own relationship to commodity. This is Vienna. Let's see if I get to Dublin.
Do you feel that the art world in general has an easier time to see of itself as a commercial environment than it used to?
Wow.
Just press OK.
It's giving me orders. But because this isn't working, I don't know what the hell I'm doing.
It's okay, it's okay.
What?
It's working again.
Well, with my finger, it's working, yes.
Where's this? Yes, try again with the remote.
Okay, so this is the new museum. Saskia.
The new museum, what year was this?
This was 2000.
Okay, so
but what was your question?
My question was if you think that the art world by now has an easier time admitting that there are a lot of commercial interests that drive the art world than it used to.
A lot of things are clearer now than in the ripe old past. For example, in 1983, I did a work on torture when it was considered completely unacceptable to torture. But now it's acceptable to torture. Back in 1973, I did a work that called some questions of what actually gets sold in an art gallery, and it was completely unacceptable. But now, of course, it's completely acceptable to invoke and even glory in commerce. Now, we do have to acknowledge that one of the elements of pop art was the complete paradigm shift from an insistence that artists stood in relationship to transcendence and to nature into a paradigm in which artists stood in relationship to second nature and to the created and, in fact, commodity-based economy. And if you don't like those descriptions, you can see, however, that there is compass to see the paradigm shift that pop art brought. So in many ways, the garage sale is a pop art work, and also was invoking the questions of what, in fact, is the distinction between high and low, because the distinctions between high and low used to rest precisely on the distinction between those objects which are not precisely commodities, but rather roots to transcendence, and those that are simply commodities and can be completely defined by their non-erratic relationship to the dollar sign and some sentimental relations and relations of use value. So we no longer operate in that world. And as I said, the garage sale was a moment in which one could actually highlight the distinctions by simply reframing the work, again, a pop art format, by placing it, by displacing it and putting it in an art gallery. Now, it's something else.
When I did the project, the garage sale with Martha before at the ICA in London, one of the things that I found most interesting was that we had a lot of visitors coming who weren't actually interested in it as an art experience, but really came to find a bargain and were going through all the items. And one of the things that actually also happened in the garage sale is that Martha prices some of the objects completely irrationally. So you might have 3 of the same items, but they all have 3 different prices, and the same vase could be like €2, and then it could be like €100. So within the garage sale, there's a lot of elements, also like the film that Martha showed before, that sort of always throw the audience off and bring it back to the context of art and make people understand that this is ultimately not really only about a garage sale.
This is London.
Now, this is actually pictures of the London garage sale. One of the things that may be also interesting to talk about is like, how do you get all these materials that are for sale? Where are these materials coming from?
At first, in '73, everyone assumed that it had to be mine, because at a garage sale, unless it says 3 families or something like that, you sell your own. So I took pains to gather together materials from people I worked with and friends, and, for example, put different size shoes together to see if anyone would notice, but nobody noticed. And subsequently, the garage sales have had various relationships to the institutions. Sometimes they are donated by the people working at the institutions with, such as here. Is that what we want to?
That's what happened,
Yes.
yes.
Okay.
The garage sale items that are for sale here in the garage sale are all items that are donated by the staff of Art Basel. Everyone who works for Art Basel was asked to donate things that they didn't need anymore to the garage sale.
Except for strategic interventions, many of which consist of these things that I keep showing, like the flamenco dancer's dress and a dress from Vienna and
Star Spangled Banner.
and the American flag. There's also a French flag. And other items that actually are for sale, 10 boxes or bags and boxes of things that I sent that were mine, mostly clothing and shoes, but not only. So the effort is actually to bypass any particular relationship to me, the artist persona, but rather to say the project is the work, and it doesn't matter whether or not they stem from me. When I was doing postcard novels back in 1973 to 5, which was also part of my effort to see how to step outside the predictable nexuses of commercial gallery and museum to a more direct form of distribution, I discovered what I did was I wrote postcard novels. That is, each postcard was an installment in a novel that was written in the first person. But what I learned is that artists above all others are not permitted to lie. So whereas there's no problem with a writer of literature writing something in the first person that's false, an artist is presumed to be deranged if they write something with I that's not strictly factual, to the point that people who knew me would evoke questions from these autobiographical novels and say things like, I didn't know you had 2 kids. People who knew me quite well, which actually shocked me at first, but I actually don't think it's changed very much since. The artist is that cultural figure whom we rely on at least to tell the truth.
You want to show more images?
Sure.
I think it's also time to open up to the audience and to maybe have some questions about the project for Martha. So if there are any questions, we're happy to answer them now.
Questions. We love questions.
There's a microphone for you.
Okay, excuse me. So, do some people ask you already to sign some objects they bought?
It's funny, you're the 3rd person in 3 days to ask me that. Actually, the first time that happened, I thought it was a joke and very funny, especially because the person was buying shoes. So, and then I realized that what we're dealing with is a matter of a certain kind of fetishistic relationship to this thing, and that there's a certain amount of sentiment involved as well. And it doesn't happen very often, less often than the question, perhaps. And you know, it depends on, I try to do everything by whim, because having machines for operating is really very boring. So if I feel like it, I do it, and if I don't feel like it, I don't. Why do you ask?
In this kind of work, actually, with related with like aesthetical relationship, I don't know in English exactly, but I think the importance with the public is really important, and like the difference between you work in the gallery and you work directly with the people is a huge difference, no? So for me, like some collectors could ask you to sign this, which are really different for their own collection, no? So that's why my question.
Reasonable.
So I just get a sign that there's maybe time for one more question, if there's one more question. If not, then okay, one more question there.
See this as a work that you actually every time want to exhibit again, or do you see it as a sort of project that you want to reinstall? And also, like, why do you want to install it or keep installing it? Is it that curators ask you to do it again and then you look at the context, or how do you think about that?
Very reasonable question. It's an extremely annoying project to do because it requires not only the gross arrangement of all kinds of things I don't really care about, along with some things I actually do care about, I have to say. But it requires that I pay attention to every tiny little thing, from a paper clip to a grand piano, and that I then have to deal with people who feel desperately that they must have it and they must not pay the price that's asked. So in terms of object relations and personal relations, it's really problematic. So I don't really like doing it, and usually I say no immediately, and then the curator has a good reason. And I become intrigued by the concept. It's never the same twice for so many reasons, not just because the venue is never the same, but also because the economic conditions, as Jens was suggesting, are never the same. And people's relationship to the idea of the commodity is always different as well, and it matters whether the people you're talking to are people from the general public or people who are attending because it's an art event, which of course it indubitably is. So it's a complicated decision and not one I take lightly. Plus, I often feel I have to mutter to people, in my real life I don't sell stuff like this, meaning, you know, this is not the be-all and end-all of what I consider to be my art practice, but I do think that it is something with a history that therefore has become interesting to me.
Well, if you want to see the work yourself, it's up today and tomorrow, 8 till 10 o'clock at the Museum for Cultural History. Thank you very much, Martha Rosler, and thanks to you for coming.